Nayeli had walked since early morning, following the long dirt trail that led from her small Apache village to the nearby western town. The air was cool, the sky wide and bright, and the sun had just begun to warm the earth. She carried a small woven bag on her shoulder, holding coins that her mother had saved for months. All she wanted was to buy flour, sugar, and a few simple things for winter. She did not expect anything more from the day. She certainly did not expect trouble. As she reached the edge of town, a few people glanced at her, then looked away quickly. Some stared longer than others, whispering behind hands. Nayeli kept her eyes low. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than reacting. She walked toward the cafe at the center of town, the only place she could get a warm meal before her long walk home. Her legs were tired, and the stretch of trail behind her still ached in her back. Inside the cafe, the sound of forks scraping plates, chairs moving, and people laughing filled the air. Nayeli stood at the doorway for a moment, gathering her courage. She knew she did not look like them. Her long dark hair was braided neatly, her clothes made by her mother's hands. She knew she would stand out, but she hoped she would be ignored. She stepped inside quietly and looked for an empty corner. She chose the table closest to the window, the one farthest from everyone else. She sat down carefully, folding her hands and waiting for the owner to notice her. The cafe owner, a heavy man with a thick mustache, saw her but walked toward another table first. Two customers near the stove whispered loudly on purpose. "What's she doing in here?" one asked. "Probably thinks she can sit anywhere now," the other replied. Nayeli's fingers tightened around the edge of her seat, but she kept her head down. She reminded herself she was here only for food. She did not want to argue. She did not want to cause any trouble. The owner finally approached her, his face stiff. "You can't sit here," he said. His voice was not loud, but sharp enough for others to hear. Nayeli looked up, confused. "I just want a meal," she whispered. "Then take it outside," he snapped. "We don't serve inside to people like you." A few people nodded in agreement. One woman crossed her arms. A man near the counter smirked. Nayeli felt her cheeks heat up from embarrassment. She wanted to ask why, but she already knew the answer. She felt the eyes of the room pressing on her, watching how she reacted. She stood up slowly, trying not to look upset. "I will eat outside," she whispered. The owner handed her a plate through the back door like she was a stray animal. She took it quietly and stepped out into the cold breeze. The wind touched her hair, and she shivered. There was no table outside, no chair, only a small wooden step beside the wall. She sat there, balancing the plate on her knees. Inside the cafe, a cowboy named Elias Ward watched everything. He sat alone at a corner table with a cup of coffee, his hat tipped forward slightly. He had seen unfair things before, but something about this moment bothered him more than usual. Maybe it was the way the cafe owner spoke, or the way everyone allowed it. Maybe it was the quiet look on Nayeli's face, a look that showed she was used to such treatment. Elias wasn't the type to get involved in other people's matters. He preferred the open range, the sound of cattle, and the quiet evenings at his ranch. But watching Nayeli eat outside in the cold made something twist in his chest. He took a slow sip of his coffee, trying to ignore the voice inside him. But each time he looked toward the window and saw the girl shivering alone, the voice grew louder. This isn't right. He tried to focus on his meal, but he felt uncomfortable. The cafe felt warmer than usual, almost suffocating. The laughter from the other tables irritated him. The easy way people spoke, pretending nothing wrong was happening, made him restless. Elias finished the last bite on his plate but didn't feel satisfied. Instead, he felt heavy with disappointment. Not at the girl, but at the people around him. He pushed back his chair and stood up. The scrape of wood on the floor caught a few eyes. Some people noticed him looking toward the door and smirked. They knew he was quiet and kept to himself. They doubted he would do anything. Elias walked slowly to the door. Before stepping out, he paused, taking a deep breath. His hand held the doorknob, but he didn't turn it right away. He was thinking about what was right and about what he could ignore. Finally, he opened the door. Cold air met his face. Nayeli heard the sound and lifted her head. Elias stood above her, his shadow falling across the step where she sat. She looked up cautiously, unsure if he was there to insult her too. But his eyes were calm, firm, and strangely gentle. "Miss," he said quietly. "This isn't right." Nayeli blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had spoken kindly to her in town for a long time. She held her plate tightly, half expecting him to take it away or tell her to leave. Elias looked at her shivering hands. "It's cold out here," he said softly, almost as if he were talking to a friend instead of a stranger. "You shouldn't be eating outside." She shook her head lightly. "They said, I cannot sit inside." "I heard," Elias replied. He said it with simple honesty, not anger. But the truth in his voice warmed her more than the sun ever could. A moment of silence stretched between them. Elias wasn't sure what to do next. But he knew one thing. Walking back inside without doing anything would make him feel ashamed for the rest of the day. Maybe for the rest of his life. "Did you finish your meal?" he asked. She nodded. "Then let me buy you a warm one," he said. "A proper one." Her eyes widened slightly. "Inside?" she whispered. "Yes, inside." He nodded once, firm. "If you want." Nayeli looked down at her lap. She wanted it, but she also didn't want trouble. "They will get angry," she said softly. "Let them," Elias answered. His tone stayed calm and steady. "Sometimes, people need to see something done the right way." He extended a hand slightly, not touching her, just offering support. She hesitated but slowly stood up. She held the plate against her chest and followed him toward the door. Inside, the room grew quiet the moment they entered together. The cafe owner stared at them in disbelief. A few customers muttered under their breath. Someone whispered, "What is he doing?" Elias ignored them all. He walked straight to a table near the center of the room and pulled out a chair for her. Nayeli froze when the owner stepped forward, blocking the way. "She can't sit here," the owner said sharply. Elias's voice stayed calm. "I'm paying for her meal. She's sitting here." The owner crossed his arms. "No. Take her outside." Elias stared at him for a long moment. Then, he reached into his coat, pulled out enough coins for 2 meals, and placed them firmly on the counter. Then, "I'll take my meal outside with her," he said, "because I won't sit in here if she isn't allowed." The cafe went silent. No one expected that. Even Nayeli looked at him in shock. Next in Stain. Even Nayeli. But Elias didn't wait for permission. He picked up 2 plates, handed one to her gently, and walked outside. She followed, her heart beating fast with confusion and gratitude. They walked together to a small hill outside town, where the breeze was cool but gentle. Elias sat down on the grass, and for the first time that day, Nayeli felt like she wasn't alone. He offered her the warm plate, and she accepted it with quiet hands. For a long moment, neither spoke. But the silence felt safe, not heavy. Finally, Elias glanced toward her. "What's your name?" "Nayeli," she whispered. "That's a good name," he said softly. "I'm Elias." She nodded, repeating it in her mind. Elias. A name that felt calm. A name that already meant something more than she expected. As they ate together under the open sky, Nayeli realized something unexpected for the first time in a long time. Someone had stood up for her. Not because they wanted anything. Not because they were forced. But simply because it was right. And for Elias, sitting beside her felt strangely natural, as if this simple moment was meant to happen all along. Neither of them knew it yet. But this small act of kindness would tie their lives together in ways neither expected. The warm food tasted better on the hill than it ever could have inside the cafe. Maybe it was the quiet breeze, or the wide sky above them, or the fact that Nayeli finally felt safe for a moment. Elias didn't talk much, but his silence wasn't heavy. It was calm, like the way people talk, with their presence instead of their words. The two of them ate slowly, enjoying the short break from the noise of the town. When Nayeli finished her meal, she placed the empty plate in her lap and looked toward the valley where the tall grass swayed gently. Elias leaned back on his arms, watching the same view. He noticed her eyes drifting to the path that led home. "You still have a long walk?" he asked, softly. "Yes," she replied. "It takes some hours." Elias frowned slightly. "Walking alone isn't safe all the way. There are open stretches and wild animals." She nodded. "I know the way. I've walked it many times. I was roaded." "I figured," he said with a small smile. "But still, you shouldn't walk back alone today. Not after what happened in town." Nayeli lowered her head. She didn't want to be a burden. She had already caused him trouble simply by existing near people who didn't want her there. "You don't need to come," she whispered. Elias didn't argue. Instead, he thought for a moment before answering. "I know I don't need to, but I want to." She looked at him, unsure what to say. He wasn't smiling proudly or trying to impress her. His expression was simple, honest, calm. He stood up and dusted off his jeans. "Let me saddle my horse. I'll walk you home, at least until the main trail." Nayeli hesitated again but finally nodded. "Thank you." Elias didn't rush her. They walked down the hill together, taking their time, letting the wind carry away the last bits of tension from the morning. When they reached the stable near the edge of town, Elias got his horse ready while she stood a few steps back, not wanting to get in the way. The horse, a strong brown mare with a white stripe on her forehead, snorted softly when she saw Nayeli. Elias smiled. "Her name is Willow. She's gentle." Nayeli whispered the name to the horse, and Willow lowered her head curiously. But the peace didn't last. When Elias started walking beside Nayeli toward the trail out of town, a few of the men from the cafe spotted them. One of them, the same man who had mocked her earlier, called out loudly, "Look at that, Cowboy's taking his new friend for a walk." Another laughed. "Careful, Elias. Folks will talk." Elias stopped. But he didn't turn around fully. He only gave a slow, cold glance over his shoulder. His voice stayed calm, but there was something sharp under it. "Then, let them talk." The men looked surprised, not expecting such a simple answer. Some watched with narrowed eyes, but Elias didn't care. He continued walking, guiding Willow with one hand and letting Nayeli walk beside him. Nayeli felt her stomach tighten. She didn't want him to get into trouble. "Maybe you should go back," she whispered, once they were far enough from the men. Elias shook his head. "Why should I let them decide what's right?" "They are many," she replied, "and they do not like me." "And?" Elias asked. "Does that make what they did right?" Nayeli didn't answer. She had lived her whole life understanding that some people simply hated her people, no matter how kind they were. She had grown up learning to stay quiet, stay polite, stay invisible. But Elias didn't seem to understand that rule, or maybe he understood it and just didn't accept it. They walked for nearly 20 minutes before Elias finally spoke again. "I apologize for what happened back there," he said. "You didn't deserve any of it." "Bod? Ah? Ah. It happens," she whispered. "Always." "It shouldn't," he replied immediately. His voice was firm, but not angry at her, angry at the situation. Angry at what she had endured. Many times. Nayeli looked down at her hands, feeling the truth of his words sink in slowly, like warmth after a cold winter. As they continued walking along the trail, the town grew smaller behind them. The landscape opened into wide fields with tall grass and scattered rocks. Birds flew overhead, and the wind felt softer away from people's eyes. Nayeli breathed easier. Elias walked a step behind her, letting her choose the pace. He didn't ask too many questions, but he listened closely whenever she spoke. She told him about her mother, who had been sick for months, about her younger cousins, who she helped raise, about how sometimes she walked to town alone because her village didn't have much left after a harsh winter last year. Elias listened with quiet focus. "You carry a lot," he said softly. She shrugged. "Someone must. You shouldn't have to do it alone," he replied. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. She didn't know how to answer that. No one outside her people ever said such words to her. The trail narrowed as they moved farther from town. Trees began to appear along the edges of the path, offering shade. Willow walked calmly beside Elias, stopping sometimes to graze on patches of fresh grass. At one point, Nayeli stumbled over a hidden rock. Elias reacted instantly, catching her arm gently. "Careful," he said, steadying her. "Thank you," she whispered. His touch wasn't forceful. It was careful, respectful, like he didn't want to frighten her. She felt her heartbeat quicken for a moment. Not from fear, but from something unfamiliar, the feeling of being protected. After walking for almost an hour, Elias finally spoke again. "If you want, I can take you the whole way to your home." Nayeli shook her head lightly. "My people will worry. They may not trust you at first." "I understand," he said. He didn't seem offended, only understanding. "Then, I'll walk with you until the ridge. From there, you can follow the path home safely." She nodded. That would be enough. As they reached the ridge, the landscape opened into a wide valley dotted with brush and wildflowers. The view was beautiful, peaceful, untouched by the noise of towns and prejudice. Nayeli felt her shoulders relax fully for the first time that day. "This is where I turn back," Elias said gently. She stopped walking and faced him. He stood with one hand resting lightly on Willow's reins, the sun behind him outlining his shape in a warm glow. He didn't look like the rough cowboys from the saloon. He looked steady, calm, and sincere. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" he asked. "For standing up for me. For walking with me. For treating me like a person." Elias's eyes softened. "That's what you are. Anyone who thinks different is wrong." Nayeli felt something warm spread through her chest. She didn't know how to explain it, but she knew this moment mattered more than she expected. She looked down at her hands, unsure if she should say more. Before she could, Elias reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small cloth bundle. "Here," he said. "It's food I packed this morning. Bread, dried berries, and a bit of smoked meat. Take it for your family." "I cannot take this," she whispered. "You can," he said gently. "And you should." She hesitated for a long moment. Then, finally accepted it. Their fingers brushed for a brief second, a small touch, but one that lingered gently in her memory. "I hope the walk home is safe," Elias said softly. "It will be now," she replied. He nodded once, tipping his hat slightly. Then he turned Willow around and began walking back toward town. Each step he took made the distance grow. But Nayeli didn't move until he disappeared behind the curve of the trail. Only then did she turn toward her home. She walked slowly at first, thinking about everything that had happened. She thought about the cold step outside the cafe, the whispers, the insults. But most of all, she thought about Elias, the quiet cowboy, who chose fairness over comfort, kindness over silence. She didn't know why he helped her. She didn't know if she would ever see him again. But she felt something change inside her heart, something that made the world feel a little less lonely and a little more hopeful. As she reached the valley path toward her village, her steps felt lighter than they had in a long time. She carried not only the food Elias had given her, but also the warmth of his simple, honest courage. Her mother would ask why she was late. Her cousins would ask if town was safe today. She didn't know what she would tell them, but she knew one thing for certain. She would not forget the cowboy who walked beside her when the rest of the world turned away. Rumors traveled faster than wagons in a small western town, and by the next morning, everyone had heard that Elias Ward had walked an Apache woman out of town like she was a princess. Some people told the story with anger, others with curiosity, and some with laughter. But no one told it kindly. Elias woke before sunrise, as he always did, and stepped outside to check on his horses. The air was cold, the sky pale with morning light. Normally, he enjoyed the quiet of dawn. But today, he felt something different in the air, something uneasy. When he reached the stable, an older ranch hand named Grant leaned against a post with a half-smile. "Heard you took a walk with an Apache girl yesterday," Grant said. "Town's full of talk." Elias didn't pause. He brushed his horse's coat and replied, "Let them talk." Grant raised an eyebrow. "You're braver than me if you don't care what they say." "It's not bravery," Elias said calmly. "It's knowing what's right." Grant didn't argue. He only nodded and walked away, leaving Elias alone with the sound of horses chewing hay. Elias tried to shake off the heaviness in his chest, but the whispers would not go away. He saddled Willow for his day's work. But before he could leave, 3 men approached from the road. He knew them: Tom, Reed, and a man named Bill who always caused trouble. They stopped a few feet from him. Their faces were stiff, their eyes judgmental. Tom spoke first. "Elias, mind if we have a word?" Elias didn't stop what he was doing. "Say it." "You made a fool of yourself yesterday," Tom said. "People saw you defending that Apache woman like she was a lady." Elias tightened the saddle straps without looking at them. "She is a lady." Bill scoffed. "She's trouble. Her kind always is." Reed added, "We're warning you. If you keep getting close to her, bad things will happen. People around here don't like it." Elias finally straightened up and faced them. His voice stayed steady. "I don't care what they like. I care about doing what's right." Bill stepped forward. "Hear us clear. Don't get involved with her again." Elias didn't raise his voice. "If I see her again, I'll treat her with respect. That's all." The men exchanged looks of frustration. They expected him to back down, but Elias never backed down when something felt wrong. He walked past them, mounted Willow, and rode off toward the field where he worked. But the tension from the morning stayed with him, like a stone stuck in his chest. While the town buzzed with gossip, Nayeli faced problems of her own in her small Apache village. When she arrived home the previous evening, her mother, Miana, had hugged her tightly, relieved she was safe. But other families had heard rumors from traders who passed through. A few people asked her quietly, "Did the cowboy help you?" Others looked at her with worry, some with fear. And that morning, as Nayeli helped her mother prepare herbs, 2 women approached their home. Their expressions were mixed with concern and frustration. "Nayeli," the elder woman said, "we heard trouble started in town. Because of you. I am a never wanting. Nayeli's heart sank. "I didn't start trouble. I only went to buy supplies." "Yet a cowboy argued with the townsfolk," the younger woman said. "Now some people blame your family." Nayeli felt a tightness in her chest. She feared this. She had hoped her silence and calm would protect everyone. But now it seemed even quiet actions caused storms. Her mother defended her gently. "My daughter did nothing wrong." The elder woman sighed. "We know she didn't. But trouble may still come. The settlers don't forget easily. And if they think she caused disrespect, they may punish the whole village." After they left, Nayeli sat by the fire, troubled. She remembered Elias walking beside her, offering her kindness without asking for anything. She remembered how calm he stood when others mocked him. She knew he didn't deserve trouble, especially not trouble caused because of her. By noon, she had made a decision. She would return to town to clear misunderstandings. She didn't know what she would say, but she knew she had to try. She told her mother she would return before sunset, then began the long walk back to the place that had hurt her, hoping she could prevent further harm. Back in town, Elias tied Willow near the blacksmith shop and walked toward the general store. But as soon as he stepped onto the wooden walkway, he overheard two men whispering loudly behind him. "That Apache girl made him lose his mind," one said. "He'll ruin himself defending her," the other replied. Elias ignored them, but their voices stung. He tried to focus on buying rope and nails for his farm, but the whispers followed him everywhere he went. By the time he stepped back outside, he felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. It was then he saw her. Nayeli stood near the edge of the street, her braid slightly messy from the long walk, her clothes dusty from the trail. She looked nervous, but determined. People stared at her immediately, and whispers rose like buzzing insects. Elias moved toward her at once. "Nayeli, what are you doing here?" "I came," her voice trembled slightly. "I came to explain, to say you didn't do anything wrong. I didn't want you to face trouble because of me." Elias felt his chest tighten with something warm and protective. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said softly. "This town isn't kind." Before she could answer, a man who had insulted her at the cafe stepped forward. His voice was loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Well, look who's back. Did you come begging for more food?" A few people laughed. One woman muttered, "Why is she here again?" Nayeli's hands shook, but she stood straight, her voice surprisingly steady. The man smirked. "You think anyone cares what you say?" Elias stepped between them immediately, his body forming a quiet shield in front of her. His voice was calm but firm. "Don't speak to her like that." The man sneered. "Or what? You'll fight for her again?" Elias didn't move. "Not fight," he said, "but I won't let you insult her." Another man added, "You're making a fool of yourself, Elias. First you defend her, now you're protecting her again? Just walk away." Elias kept his eyes steady. "If you want to speak badly about her, say it. In front of me." No one spoke for a long moment. The street fell strangely quiet. People watched, waiting for someone to challenge him, but no one did. They all knew Elias wasn't a man who yelled or threatened, yet he had a strength that made men hesitate. Seeing that no one dared continue, Elias gently guided Nayeli toward the quieter side of town. She walked beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to make more trouble." "You didn't," Elias said. "But you," she looked at him with worried eyes. "They treat you badly because you defended me." Elias slowed his steps, turning to face her. "I don't care what they say. You didn't deserve what happened yesterday, and you don't deserve what they're saying today." Her eyes softened with gratitude. "No one has spoken like that for me before." He looked away for a moment, feeling something deep in his chest. "Maybe no one tried," he said, "but I will." They continued walking until they reached the small path that led away from town. The air felt quieter, kinder. Nayeli breathed out slowly, as if letting go of the fear she had carried since morning. "You shouldn't walk back alone," Elias said. "Let me take you at least to the ridge again." Nayeli didn't argue this time. She nodded gently. As they walked side by side, she felt safer than she had ever felt in town. Elias matched her pace, careful not to rush her, careful to stay close but respectful. Halfway to the ridge, she spoke softly. "I came to protect you." Elias blinked. "Protect me?" "Yes," she said. "I didn't want you to be blamed for what happened. You were kind. You didn't deserve anger." Elias felt something warm spread through him. Her concern touched him deeply, more than he expected. He looked at her with gentle eyes. "You didn't need to do that," he said softly. "But I'm glad you did." Nayeli lowered her gaze, her cheeks warming. She didn't know why his words affected her so strongly, but they did. Something about him, his calm voice, his quiet strength, his fairness, made her feel seen, valued, important. When they reached the ridge, the same place where they parted yesterday, the wind moved softly through the tall grass. Nayeli turned to him with a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Elias tipped his hat lightly. "Anytime." She walked down the valley path, glancing back once, just once, to look at him again. Elias stood on the ridge, watching her until she disappeared from sight. Neither of them knew it yet, but after today, their lives would never return to what they were before. Something between them had begun soft, quiet, but strong enough to challenge the whole town. The next few days passed quietly, but the memory of what happened stayed alive in both the town and the Apache village. Elias continued his work on the ranch, fixing fences, checking cattle, and waking before dawn as always. But something inside him had changed. Every time he looked toward the distant valley where Nayeli lived, he felt a gentle pull in his chest as if a small part of his heart had followed her home that day. In town, the gossip did not stop completely, but something unexpected began to happen. The sheriff, a fair man who valued peace more than pride, heard about the arguments and the way the cafe owner had treated Nayeli. After speaking with a few people, he made a simple announcement in the general store. "No one in this town is to be refused service for their background or who they are," the sheriff said. "If they have money to pay, they sit inside." Some people didn't agree, but the sheriff's word carried weight. The cafe owner frowned, but didn't argue. And a few townsfolk, especially the women who often saw injustice but couldn't openly challenge men, quietly supported the new rule. One woman even remarked softly, "Maybe kindness isn't weakness after all." Word reached the cafe owner that refusing service again would cause trouble with the law. So, reluctantly, he removed the unwritten rule that had kept people like Nayeli outside for years. He didn't apologize, but he changed the rule, and that was a start. Meanwhile, Nayeli tried to return to her normal life, helping her mother, preparing herbs, gathering water, and checking on the young children of the village. But her heart wasn't the same. Every night, when the firelight flickered in her home, she found herself thinking of Elias, of his calm voice, his steady eyes, his decision to stand for her when no one else dared. Her mother noticed. One evening, Miana touched her daughter's hand and asked gently, "Your heart is troubled, my child." Nayeli looked down. "Not troubled, just changed." Miana nodded slowly. "Sometimes, one kind soul can shift the world inside us." Nayeli didn't answer, but her mother's words warmed her. She wondered if Elias thought about her too. 2 days later, an unexpected sound echoed through the valley hoofsteps, slow and respectful. Nayeli stepped outside her home to see Elias approaching with a horse carrying a small bundle of supplies tied to the saddle. She stood still, surprised yet strangely comforted by the sight of him. He stopped a few steps away and stepped down from Willow. "I brought something," he said, holding the bundle out gently. "Just a few things for your mother. And for the winter." Nayeli hesitated. "You already gave us food." "This is different," Elias said. "It's not charity. It's an apology. For the town. For how they treated you." Nayeli felt her chest tighten. His eyes held no pity, only sincerity. She accepted the bundle, with quiet hands. Her mother stepped outside, curious, and smiled warmly at the cowboy. "You are welcome here," she said. "Any man with a heart like yours is welcome." Elias nodded respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am." He helped them place the supplies inside flour, dried beans, warm cloth, simple medicine, and even a small jar of honey. Nayeli didn't know how to respond. Her eyes softened with gratitude. After setting everything down, Elias stepped outside with her to look at the wide valley. The grass danced gently in the wind, and the sky stretched endlessly above them. "You didn't have to come," Nayeli said quietly. "I wanted to," Elias replied. "I wanted to make things right." "You already did," she whispered. For a moment, neither spoke. They stood side by side, watching the sun move slowly across the sky. Elias's hat cast a shadow across his face, but she could still see the softness in his eyes. He looked toward the village homes scattered across the valley floor. "Your people seem kind," he said. "Stronger than most." Nayeli smiled softly. "They have learned to live with hardship. Kindness grows stronger where pain has lived." Elias nodded. "Maybe that's why you stood so calm that day at the cafe." She looked at him, her voice low. "I was not calm. I was afraid. But I have learned not to show it." Elias felt something shift inside him. He admired her more deeply now, not just for her quiet strength, but for the honesty she trusted him with. As the evening light began to glow golden, some of the village children ran toward them, curious about the cowboy. One brave little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Can you show me how to ride your horse?" Elias smiled gently. "Only if Willow agrees." He lifted her carefully and let her sit on the saddle, while Willow stood perfectly still. Nayeli watched the scene, with a warmth spreading through her heart. More children joined, laughing and asking questions. Willow calmly allowed them to touch her mane. One boy asked, "Is this your wife's horse?" Elias nearly choked, but Nayeli laughed softly, shaking her head. "No. No. He is just a friend." The boy shrugged. "She likes you." Elias glanced at Nayeli, who looked away quickly, cheeks warming. The moment passed in gentle silence, but it left a warm trace in the air. As the sun dipped lower, Elias helped repair the village's broken corral fence. He worked with steady hands while Nayeli passed him tools and held the wooden posts in place. They barely spoke, but their silence felt peaceful, full of unspoken understanding. When they finished, Nayeli looked at the repaired fence and whispered, "Thank you." Elias wiped the dust from his hands. "It's nothing." "It is something," she said. "Everything you do is something." He looked at her with quiet admiration. "You deserve kindness, Nayeli, more than anyone I know." Her eyes softened, and she felt her heartbeat quicken. She didn't know how to respond, but her silence said enough. As twilight slowly settled over the valley, Elias prepared to leave. Willow stomped her hooves softly, ready for the journey home. Nayeli walked with him to the edge of the village, where the path narrowed. "Will you return?" she asked softly, almost afraid to hear the answer. Elias looked into her eyes deep, warm, full of sincerity. "If you want me to." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I do." His expression softened. "Then, I will." He paused for a moment, searching for the right words. "Nayeli, what happened in town? It wasn't your fault. People there will learn eventually, and I won't let anyone treat you that way again." She stepped closer, the wind brushing her braid gently. "You already changed something," she said. "Inside the town, and inside me." Elias felt a warmth spread through him. "And you changed something in me." The words hung between them, soft as the breeze. He finally mounted Willow, holding the reins loosely. He tipped his hat with a warm, gentle smile. "Good night, Nayeli." "Good night, Elias," she replied. He rode away slowly, looking back once to see her standing in the golden light, watching him with a soft expression he would remember for a long time. Over the next weeks, Elias visited the village again and again, not because he needed to, but because something in his heart called him back. Each time, Nayeli greeted him with a brighter smile. The villagers accepted him, little by little, and he helped fix what he could: fences, roofs, tools, and even spirits. In return, Nayeli showed him her world, her traditions, her family, and her quiet strength. The town's opinion of Elias began to change too. Some people noticed the way he treated everyone fairly, the way he stood calmly, without anger or pride. A few even apologized to Nayeli the next time she visited for supplies, not loudly, not completely, but enough to show that hearts can change when someone brave stands up first. One day, on that same ridge, where they had parted twice before, Nayeli stood with Elias watching the sunset. The sky was painted gold and pink, and the wind moved gently between them. Nayeli whispered, "That day outside the cafe, I thought the world would always be cruel." "Do?" Elias looked at her, his voice soft. "Not while I'm in it." She smiled, a quiet, beautiful smile filled with trust. In that moment, neither of them needed to say more. Their hearts understood each other perfectly. They walked side by side down the ridge, the golden grass brushing against their legs. The world around them felt wide and bright, full of possibility. A simple act of courage had brought two hearts together, changing the town, the village, and their lives forever.